As you're coming in and you're listening to us, welcome. We're glad to have you. We're going to get going here in about a minute. But if you're comfortable, we'd really appreciate seeing where you're calling in from. We know we have people from all over the province of Alberta, which is great. And we also know we have people tuning in beyond Alberta. So if you're comfortable using the chat, put that in just so we can get a sense. Oh, look at all the Calgary.
Oh, wonderful. We've got a nice turnout from Calgary. We've got some Montreal.
Some Toronto, New Brunswick.
Oh, I saw someone from Fort Langley. Ed, a shout out to my Fort Langley friend. I am also here in Fort Langley, British Columbia. Love to see that.
Yes.
Welcome, Edmonton, PG, Prince George. So
great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. A lot of our Canadian friends just celebrated a nice long weekend. We hope you had a beautiful time with family and friends. Let us know what the highlight was from your weekend. If you're from Canada, you had a Thanksgiving weekend here.
Yeah, use the chat. And great to see you, Precious, from Cold Lake. Good to see somebody calling in from Cold Lake. So that's great to see.
Oh, we just have turkey.
Turkey, we had some. I love it.
I had turkey soup today for lunch today.
Oh, Catherine, it's great to see you here. Love that you're here. I'm glad that you got some naps in there. That's fantastic.
Yeah, Northern Lights for us in Alberta. I don't know how many of you have seen them, but last night we went out. We couldn't see them, but 2 nights ago we went out. I got some great pictures, and that was on my wife's bucket list, and so we got that done. So great Northern Lights here. I don't know if they're going to be back tonight or not.
All right, Nicole.
Excellent. I am going to get us started. So welcome to our noontime webinar on building a high-performance culture. My name is Nicole Bourgeois, and I'm the coordinator of member engagement and experience, and it's so great to have you all with us today. So welcome. I want to acknowledge that we're living and working on traditional territories in Alberta of the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries, including the peoples of Treaty 6, 7, and 8. And if you are joining us from outside of Alberta, which a lot of you are, I invite you to honor the land where you are today.
Thanks so much, Nicole. Really appreciate the warm welcome and the opportunity to partner with CPHR Alberta, and welcome to everybody who's calling in from Alberta and beyond. My name is Ed Temple. I am calling out of Calgary myself. Really grateful to be here. As mentioned, I'm an executive coach with Essential Impact, and I've been doing this for about 10 years. And one of the things I'd say about my coaching background is I started working internal to an organization when I became a coach. And a lot of what I got to do is help create a coaching culture within the organization. And so I know the complexities of working within an organization for about 5 years and some of those challenges. And I know many of you calling in today, that's your situation. You are working internally in HR or some other area, and you're interested in what coaching culture might do for your organization. And then since then, the last 5 years, I've been working externally, working with many different organizations, just help them discover their pathway on what it looks like for them to create a coaching culture. And today we're so honored to be able to tell one of those stories of one of the partners that we've worked with around how they figured out what a coaching culture might do for them. And so we really look forward to hearing from Jim today. That's really what Essential Impact is all about. We help develop coaching skills among leaders. And so it's about equipping the leaders to use a coach approach in their leadership to make them more effective in whatever ways that are needed for the organization. And so that partnership looks very unique to each organization that we work with, but we come alongside to help take a coach approach to helping people figure out that coaching culture and really developing the skills of coaching for leaders within the organization. So I'm really glad to be representing Essential Impact. I represent a great team of people. A number of them are on the call today. And one of those partners that I get to work with is Jody. So Jody, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, hi, everyone. And thanks, Ed. Yes. So as mentioned, I'm Jody King. I am a certified leadership coach, and I am also the director of brand and communications for Essential Impact. I am so excited to be here, but more than that, I'm excited that you've decided to join us here for this next hour. As Ed mentioned, you're going to hear us talk a lot about coaching cultures. And we've helped organizations like Rogers Communications develop award-winning company cultures through the use of coaching. So we'll share a little bit more about that as we go on today. Stay tuned. And as Nicole kind of hinted, there might be something special for our CPHR members today. So we're here to learn from Jim Reid and to hear his leadership stories, but we're also here to learn from you We're here to connect with you, and we want to connect with you. So we have some opportunities today in the chat as we go throughout our session today. If you have questions for myself, Ed, or Jim, drop them in the chat or drop them in the Q&A box. Either is fine. Our team is going to be there collecting your questions. And a little bit later on in our session, I'm going to jump back on screen to host our Q&A session. So make sure you drop your questions into the chat and the Q&A. I will make sure to tackle those with Jim, Ed, and myself for sure a little bit later on in our session. But for now, we want to get the ball rolling and hear from you. What are you hoping to learn today? What brought you here? What are you hoping to learn from Jim or hear from Jim? Let us know in the chat right now. I'm going to see all of you in the chat now. And Ed, I'm going to throw back to you and see you in just a little bit.
That's great. Yeah, thank you, Jody. And thank you for putting some of your comments here in the chat. One of the things that's very valuable I found in these webinars is not just what you're going to hear from Jim and myself and Jody, but also where other people are coming from in the questions that they bring in the chat. And so as you're able to scroll that and listen, please feel free to put in there. We know we have a bunch of people on this call, but we really appreciate your engagement and just sharing a little bit of why you're here and what you're hoping to get out of this. This also will help Lauren kind of curate the questions. We're going to be asking you for questions later, and we really want to be asking those questions that are going to be the most meaningful for the most of you. We know there's a large group here, and so there's going to be a bunch of questions coming in, and we really want to make sure that we are calibrating what we are offering here according to what your expectations are. So thank you for sharing in the chat, and Lauren will be responding there at times and giving you some information when appropriate as well. So with that, let me introduce to you Jim Reid, our guest today, and I'm really excited to be able to do this. Jim, great to see your face. So glad that you put yourself on there. I'm going to read your bio, and it has some great things in it, but I'm just really privileged to be able to get to know you through this process. I've been able to do some of the coach training that we've done at Rogers, but we've never had a chance, obviously because, working, you're not involved in all of those things because the organization is so large. And I know you're going to share a little bit more about the organization in a second, but for all of you who don't know Jim, he is the Chief Human Resource Officer since 2011 at Rogers. He's responsible for shaping the talent, culture, and engagement strategy at Rogers. With a keen understanding of what it takes to win, Jim has elevated the employee experience agenda by strengthening key programs in the areas of leadership development, frontline training, talent management, and culture. Over the next 3 years, Jim will lead Rogers' workplace transformation initiative, enabling the company to become more collaborative, agile, and flexible. So during his tenure, Rogers has been recognized as one of Canada's most admired corporate cultures, one of the top 100 employers in Canada, a top employer for young people, and one of Canada's best diversity employers and greenest employers. I know there's so many stories packed into that, which I don't even know if we're going to get to today. But in 2021, Jim was named one of Canada's best 50 executives by the Globe and Mail's Report on Business magazine. And finally, a couple of interesting things about Jim. Jim has been, he's had 20 years of leading large global human resource teams, including Husky Injection Molding Systems and the global health science company MDS Incorporated. Here's really fascinating stuff. We're really getting into it. He's a former tactical helicopter pilot in the Canadian Armed Forces. I wish we had an hour just for those stories, Jim. And you served for more than 3 years in West Germany. Jim holds an MBA from McMaster University and is a graduate of Harvard's Advanced Management Program. And what I really am happy to also be able to say is that you're also an ICF certified coach, just like me. And it's so great to have you here today. So welcome, Jim, and thank you for sharing this hour with us. Now I don't know if you want to correct anything in what I've said with that bio, but what I'm really interested in, what else would you want us to know about you as we get into this conversation?
And thank you. That was a great introduction. I appreciate that a lot. I just want to say hello to everybody that's on the call today. It's just wonderful to be here with people who, I know we share a passion for building leaders and coaching and shaping cultures and winning in the marketplace. So it's just great to be here. It's a real honor to be asked to share some of the story with you. Just in your question, I've been the Chief HR Officer for 10 years at Rogers. I'm just in year 11. And my accountability, I report to the CEO, Joe Natale. And my accountability is around shaping the people and culture strategy so we win in the marketplace. And Ed, you did such a beautiful job talking about, we're most admired culture, which was a big honor for us. Hopefully we're going to be top 100 employer 9 years in a row. I think they announce in a couple of weeks. So I'm pretty optimistic that we'll stay with that. And of course, as you said, I'm a former military pilot, military helicopter pilot, tactical helicopters. And my first squadron, I was stationed in Lar, West Germany. I was there for 4.5 years. It was unbelievable. Then I was an instructor pilot, but I graduated from Royal Roads Military College in Victoria. I was there for 4 years. And so the West is in my blood and it has my passion. And that's why it's so fun to be on this call today. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jim, for sharing a little bit more about your background. And, as we talk, you're leading at Rogers, and what probably would be helpful for people is for people to understand a little bit more about the organization, the scope of it, because there's a lot of different components to it. So what can you tell us about Rogers?
Yeah, it's a fascinating company. I mean, Rogers was founded in 1960 by Ted Rogers, who was the founder, and Ted passed away, I'd say maybe 12 or 13 years ago. But Rogers has really grown to become a leading technology and media company. Revenues today of about just over 13 billion, so we're pretty big. I think we're 19th in Canada. And for those of you in Alberta, we have made an offer to purchase, which is subject to regulatory approval, Shaw Communications. And so we're excited about that merger. We just believe together we'll be a stronger national company and we'll do great things for our communities and for Canada. So we're working through all those regulatory approvals now. Hopefully we'll be successful. Our big competitors, of course, are Bell and Telus. I refer to them as the other guys. So, and they're pretty tough competitors in the marketplace. But at the heart of it, we connect people, businesses and communities to each other and really to the world around them. And we have about 25,000 team members. We service over 10 million Canadians every day. We have a big media operation as well as wireless and internet businesses. And our media business has over 50 radio stations nationally. We have a national television service. We're the #1 rated sports brand television station in Canada. We're the sole owner of the Toronto Blue Jays, and we own 40% of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, which owns the Toronto Raptors, Toronto Maple Leafs. Sorry, not anything in Alberta, although we'd love to. But so it's a fun company. It's a young company. Like we're probably 60% millennial and Gen Z today, probably ahead of the marketplace.
Yeah, that's great. And hey, who knows what happens with Shaw? Once the bloodstreams mix, you never know what your footprint in Alberta might be afterwards.
You got it. I'm coming to Calgary. That's what I know.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing us a little bit more of the scope of Rogers. And, we also know, for those of us who might pay attention, Rogers' impact on the community is also something that there's a big focus on. There's lots around Jays Care, Canadian Red Cross, Canadian Food Bank, big partners of yours. Some great work that you do there. But what I'm curious about, and what we're here to learn more about, is when it comes to building a high-performing culture and about developing people and teams, and you already mentioned that, what can you tell us about the focus of development of people at Rogers?
Yeah. Well, it's so fundamentally important for all of us that are on this call today. For me, culture and leadership is everything. Like it's the absolute most important and precious thing I think that we have in our organizations today. I mean, Peter Drucker, I think, said it years ago. I can't remember what the exact quote was, but it was almost like culture eats strategy for breakfast or something like that. I think that kind of says it all. But we believe, and I certainly believe, that companies with the best culture are going to attract the best talent and they're going to win in the long term. So that's why I really believe that, culture is so fundamentally important, and it's the execution engine of the company. Our goal at Rogers is to make the company one of the best places to work in the country. And we've been on a journey, slowly strengthening our value proposition for our teams. And, where we just did an external brand campaign, and our new value proposition is around make your possible. So a big focus on us and coaching with our leaders is getting behind people, their development, helping them build a rewarding, challenging, exciting career with us so they can spend, years and years and years building capability, making a difference, working with great talent, and serving this great country we live in. So hopefully that answers your question, Ed.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it definitely whet my appetite for more. So that's great. And so maybe now, what can you share us about the catalyst to start moving towards a coaching culture? Maybe a little bit of the backstory so we understand where you started. And already I saw a question come in around like, what are the steps to doing it? We don't need to get there yet, but just for you, what was a bit of that journey look like?
I think for me, it started when I got recruited to Rogers. And before I was at Rogers, I was working in private equity with a Toronto-based private equity company called Onyx. And they bought a company, you mentioned it, Ed, called Husky Injection Molding. They took the company private. And then I was recruited in as part of the turnaround team to try to help them. You know, they're not in it for the long term, right? I mean, these private equity guys, they're very smart, they're sharp, they're killers in a sense, you know, in terms of looking at ways to improve the business. And then it's kind of built to flip, right? They want to sell it and make a return. And in the Husky case, we were their fourth best ever return on investment, right? So we kind of got it right. But when I was there, I tried to really go after building leaders because I'm just passionate about leadership. And I think if there's only one thing that I could do as the head of HR in any company I worked in, it would be, and I could only do one thing, it would be build leaders and help instill in them really deep-rooted coaching skills. But when I was at Husky, I never really got the traction, partly because we couldn't make the investment because of the private equity scene. So when I got recruited to Rogers, Nadir Mohammed was the CEO. He came to Rogers from, I think he lived in Vancouver. I think he's still in Vancouver. And I said to him, I'll come and work with you. I'd love to, but under one condition. I said, I really wanted to transform the HR organization into a high impact team. And I wanted his personal support that we could invest in leaders. And so when I got here, one of the teams did some research and found this great business in British Columbia called Essential Impact. And I flew out there and met with the founding partners. And I said, can you help me? You know, and I had the money and the resources, and it was like a dream come true. And I think that's what it was all about. For me, I just felt so strongly that if we could teach our leaders how to coach individuals and build this incredible life skill, it's not just a business skill, it's a life skill. And if we could get behind it and we could really do some magical things together. And that's what's turned out to be the most rewarding part about the journey. I think we've really moved the culture forward, and a much more progressive company today, and company that's recognized, you know, as one of the most admired cultures. So that means we're doing some things right.
Yeah, for sure. 9 years going on 10.
Yeah.
You know, and I love what you talked about around the focus of people, you know, and this is not just a work thing. It is beyond that. And people bring everything of themselves to work. And I appreciate that focus of development of people that goes beyond that. And, you know, I mean, everybody, you have dreams and plans, you got a great partner and you thought this is going to be it. But as we all know, you put your plans in action and all of a sudden reality hits and things go sideways. So can you share with us a little bit about your first attempts and some of the learnings early on when you were kind of stumbling your way into figuring this out?
Yeah. First of all, you know, the one thing that I was focused on was helping the business perform better, right? So like, where was I coming from? It wasn't just to build leaders. It was to help build leaders that could deliver high performance on a consistent, sustainable basis. So that was really my motivation. You know, and when I joined, engagement in the company was 68%, which was below the Canadian median. And the company had a reputation as being not a great place to work. In fact, a psychologist that I knew did some consulting at Rogers when I was being recruited, I called him and I said, you know, I think I'm going to join Rogers. And he said to me, I'll give you the best advice anybody's ever given anyone. Turn around and run as fast and far away from Rogers as you can. But for me, it was the challenge. Like, I love a challenge. That's one of my passions. But I would say we learned so much, right, about how to anchor coaching into the culture, you know, and it was a journey. I started with HR. You know, the HR team was seen as hardworking, but not at the table and not driving impact. So we first brought in, I felt that I had to get coaching anchored within the HR team first. So we took all of our high potential HR business partners and started them on the certification journey. I'm pleased to say today that we have over 100 HR business partners that are fully certified as coaches. It's impressive, and they show up so beautifully with the business today. It's a completely different team. But when we started very slow. We didn't talk it up with the leaders first. We got a couple of years under our belt with the HR team to drive transformation in HR. And then we launched a director program with our director leaders. Think about, we have 3,500 people leaders at Rogers, but our 160 executives and 1,000 directors. And when I was talking to people when I joined, they were the ones who were hungry for development. So I jumped over the VP group and went straight to the directors, and we gave the director level leaders the first 24 hours of the 60 hours required for, could be different now today, I don't know, for ICF. I call it ground school, right? For certification. It's my military background, right? It's 24 hours of ground school.
Yeah.
And and the rest kind of went from there. We had a lot of people saying the same things. I think I'm a pretty good coach. It's gonna be a waste of my time. And then after the 24 hours was over, they would consistently say, this is the best learning experience I've ever had in my career.
Wow.
But creating a coaching culture, requires developing a culture that's psychologically safe and committed to learning. There's no question that that's one of the things that we learned early on. We recognized that the team members, the employees had to value coaching, which of course in our case they did. They were hungry for it. The senior executives had to value it. It took a while to get them there, but they're certainly there today. The organization, we needed a dedicated line item in our budget, which is about building coaching skills. We have that. We got that investment that Nadir promised me, and we kept it. We've offered coaching to all employees today. We have a coaching roster of certified coaches that can match up with our employees at any time. Anybody who wants coaching and career development. I think we have 729 people that are active in that program today across the company.
Wow.
And of course, the specific coaching training. So we didn't have all that figured out day one.
Yeah.
But we kind of put the pieces together over time, and recognizing that coaching is no different than any other task or skill. It needed to be structured, systematic, and built around a framework. I'm a great believer, it comes from my pilot days, that if you want to become excellent at something, you need to develop against a framework.
Yeah.
So of course, the framework we picked for coaching was from Essential Impact. It was the accelerator model, right? But
yeah,
I'm saying pick any, but you need a framework, and then you need to develop and learn and master your skills against that framework to get really good at something. It's the same with doing anything, flying a plane or a helicopter, or becoming a great leader.
Yeah. So many good things in there, and I'm sure people are writing notes frantically. You'll be happy to see that groundwork and a helicopter emoji has made it into the chat now.
Great.
But a couple of key things that I heard you in your story was that one of them was you were very strategic in where you chose to launch this first.
Yeah.
And it sounded like those are really strategic seeds planted to see where it might grow. The second thing I heard was that there was a path of least resistance, meaning you went to the people that were hungriest for it first, which for you is at the director level.
Exactly.
That's where they wanted to grow. And so that's where you saw the biggest impact.
Yeah.
And then the third thing that you said was the framework. You built it against a framework to make sure that that would be what it would sustain it and kind of help it grow and build.
Yeah, exactly.
Did I miss anything that was really key?
No, I think that's it. I mean, I think you have to be able to, like in my case, I had the support of the CEO, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And therefore the executive team. And the way that we showed the value was on some of our key organizational metrics. Like engagement is our core HR metric at Rogers. And so we moved the needle, right, on engagement over our journey from 68% when we started to 87% last year in the middle of the pandemic. And how did we do it? We hired a PhD in analytics from Google, and we did these annual surveys where we asked people what's working, what's not working, and give us your suggestions and ideas about how to strengthen the company and make us a great place to work. And then what we did is we we did a deep analytics on the data. And we saw, based on the analytics, what the number one, number two, and number three drivers of engagement were. And one of the big drivers was growth, personal growth and development of our teams. It just makes intuitive sense, right?
Yeah.
But we had data to back it up. And with that data and backing it up, we earned the credibility of the executive team. Like, they started to watch and they started to see leaders with the training. It's not really training, if you know what I know, you know that, Ed. Like, it's I think of it as a life skill, but when we noticed the people who had really embraced it and got behind it started to have the highest engagement in their teams, strongest leadership effectiveness scores, and we really that's when we started to get real momentum. And credibility from the business, right? Because, and of course, by then our HR team was at the table, and they're now trained as a certified coach, like you, Ed, and Jody, and lots of people on this call, I'm sure. And you know, one of the things that I was trying to do is take this young team and give them some backbone so that they lean into the tough conversations. And build trust. You know, which is sort of the oxygen of high performance, you know? So it's been great.
Yeah, I love the way you said it, you know, the oxygen of high performance, that you need that trust. And also another thing you talked about is that you point coaching in one area, and there's this overflowing effect that it has this positive aspect to other areas of your life, but other areas of the business. So if you could share with us a little bit more around like engagement, retention, anything else that you kind of measured, because I saw the chat light up when you started talking about some performance metrics. What else can you tell us about the positive impact?
I mean, we're very, like, show me the data is one of my favorite expressions. And like quite a few years ago, I met my mentor, who's been my mentor over the years. Is this he's a social scientist. His name's Jim Collins. He wrote Good to Great. And after I became the head of HR, I started it as a pilot, of course, and I went into operations. And when I moved over to HR, I think the CEO that put me in the job panicked. And he said, I better send Jim for some training. So they sent me to Stanford, and I was on this program called the Executive Program in Organizational Change. And Jim Collins and Jerry Porras were running that program. And I just built a relationship with him that was one of the luckiest things that ever happened to me in my life. And I ended up, working with him on 3 of his big research projects. First one was Good to Great. He calls them critical readers, but you're on the extended research team. And then I did How the Mighty Fall. And then I did his latest one was called Great by Choice. And he changed the way that I think about performance forever. And he wasn't a big leader believer. And I said to him all the time, I said, Jim, you say that because you're not working in an organization. Like, you know, we all know a great leader when we work for one or see one. So he thought it was just the answer to everything. But on the metrics side, engagement was the number one thing we picked. But we saw absenteeism drop. We saw our revenue and earnings performance in our call centers go way up. We saw inclusion. We measure inclusion as part of our I&D. Metrics go from, you know, kind of mid to low 70s to 87%.
Wow.
Employee pride went up to 93% last year, which was a record high for us. So I really believe you have to. I'm a big believer in employee surveys. Ask the same questions every year. Take action. Figure out. Get somebody who's strong in analytics. Mine the data, and then use that to inform your action plan. But a big part of our plan was, you know, as I said, if you're going to do one thing, build leaders. Right? They set the tone. And nobody wants to work for a bad leader.
Thank you, Jim. That's some great stuff. And I guess, so going beyond some of those metrics, I'm curious about strategy at Rogers and how over the last, 9 years, 10 years you've been doing this, how coaching is now having an impact on the strategy, where there's kind of like a pushing up around that view is actually shaping the organizational strategy. If you can say anything about that.
I mean, we're lucky in a sense, because when Joe Natale came in 2017, he I would say for me as the HR business, I'm really an HR business partner, right? That's what I do every day. Like I do lots of other things too, but I'm the HR business partner to the CEO. And my first conversation with him, he kind of laid out a kind of a value chain, which was culture first, and then customer experience. So he believed that if we can build culture by engaging our workforce, we'll deliver better customer experience, and then we'll deliver over time better financial outcomes. So for us, it's the foundation of our business strategy. You know, that's how I think he thinks about it. That's how I think about it. And I think we've got our leaders thinking that way too. You know, there was Dave Ulrich, I'm sure a lot of people on the call have maybe seen him present. He came to speak with our leadership team a couple of years ago. I liked him though. He was very simple. Like I liked his simplicity. One of the things he said was the leader's role is to do two things. It's to create value for customers and to shape a high performance culture. And I really subscribe to that, Ed. You know, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of great things in there. I'll have to go back and review this to take my own notes because I'm eating this up. But I'm curious about, so now looking to the future, we're going to get at some questions here in a minute from Jody and from the people here who are listening. But as you look to the future, I read in your bio, your mandate for the next 3 years, you know, what are you hoping or planning for in regards to coaching over the next, you know, however you'd want to answer that, whether that's the next year or 3 years, what does that look like?
Well, I think this is like, what's the, quite a few years ago, I read this quote by the CEO. I heard him speak at this executive forum in New York. His name is Percy Barnevik. He ran ABB, which was one of the biggest global, conglomerates. I think they had 80 P&Ls or 80 business units or some crazy thing. But he had a great expression. He said, change is like going up the down escalator. The moment you stop, you'll be right back where you started. So for me, I'm on a mission around this. And I see culture as the execution engine. I mentioned that earlier. I see the team as the performance unit. And the strategy is to build leaders, teach them how to hire the right people, get the right people on the bus. This is Jim Collins stuff, get the wrong people off the bus because they just suck the energy out of the room, right? And then right people, right seats, strong teams. And so we've taught our leaders how to coach individually, but the follow-on program that we did with them was a program called High Trust Teams. And again, we picked the framework we used was the Lencioni, most people are probably familiar with that, the Lencioni model of teams. He wrote a book called 5 Dysfunctions, I think it was called, but in the appendix, there's some great stuff. It turned to turn it more positive. And so that's what I'm all about. And I think if this Shaw deal goes through, it's going to make it even more exciting for me because we'll get another 1,000 leaders, right, that we can work with. Shaw's a fantastic company. And I think we can just wrap our arms around them. And so much a part of these mergers is to win over the hearts and minds of people and bring them forward in the future in a way where they feel like, they've got an exciting opportunity ahead of them. So I see this as foundational to success. I'm very passionate about it, Ed, as you can see, right? Like I believe in it. I believe it because it works.
Yeah, for sure. And you have some great things to share about that. I'm going to pass it over to Jody here. Jim, you can take a second, maybe catch your breath, have a drink of water. We do have more questions for you, so don't go anywhere.
Sure. Okay.
And Jody's going to come in and ask a couple of questions, and we're going to be taking some questions from the panelists, the attendees.
Hi, everyone. Okay, hold on one second. I just messing about here with the spotlights, of course. Jim, just give me 1 second here. There we go. Now we're all together. Love it. Jim, a question here from Andrea. She wrote, for individuals who thought they maybe didn't need coaching, you mentioned that at the top of our time together, how did you influence them beyond mandate to get certified?
Yeah, I think that's one of the big hurdles that you have to overcome, right? Because we had a lot of pretty tenured leaders who thought they were pretty good at coaching, right? And I'm sure Jody, you and Ed see this all the time. And what I did is first of all, I started with the people who wanted the skill development, they wanted the training. So we went first to them because we knew that if they were open to it, they'd talk it up after, and that's exactly what they did, right? But I think a big part of what I would go in at the start of every 24-hour session, like I didn't do them all, but at the start when we did them, when we were working with Essential Impact, I was there for a lot of them, and I just said, hey, listen, stay open, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this 24 hours for you. When I come back, and then I went back to the close. And I always said, like, stay open. Like, this is going to build. At the end of the first day, you might say, I think I'm wasting my time. But by the end of the third day, you're gonna have a different view. And it happened every single time like that. So I think, the other thing I'd say for the people on the call is go get certified yourself. Like I just feel that this is a 21st century skill set. It's not just good at work. It's great with your friends, your family, your children, and you learn. It's all about accountability and building accountability in others and making them own the outcome. And so you learn how to listen better. You ask questions and stop telling people what to do. And all the things that Jody, you and Ed know more about than I do. But it's a very powerful mindset shift for helping build leaders.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, Jim. I joke with my husband when I first got certified, it changed our marriage. That's for sure. It changes how you communicate with people, and that's a really powerful, like you said, 21st century skill.
Yeah.
How are we communicating with each other?
My wife Patty is on television. She works for the enemy. She works for CTV Bell CTV News. She's the chief personal finance correspondent. And with our kids, she would get upset because she'd say, why do the kids always come to you? And I said to her, because I don't tell them what to do. Like, we have a conversation. It's like a coaching conversation, right? And then when she figured that out and the penny dropped, like, she's very good now. Like, anyway, it's such a powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And it's a skill anybody can learn at any time. That's Absolutely. A good story. It must make for some interesting dinner time conversations at your house.
Yeah.
Okay. So Patrick asks, how do I start building a coaching culture? What are the action steps? I heard you talk a little bit about choosing a framework. What would you add to that, Jim?
I think it goes back to what Ed and I were talking about. Like, I would say start small, and start with the people who are interested. But ultimately, for you to create a coaching culture, you have to get the top executives on side. You have to secure the investment. And the way we did that was we tied it to data, like through the employee survey, and we showed them that leaders who had the first 24 hours of ground school there on becoming a coach were just our best leaders. And this is not the leaders saying they're the best. This is the people who work, their team members. And so we told the story with data in the language of the business. And then we got the investment. And when you get the investment, then, and you're going to be faced in good times and bad times. And in bad times, you have to protect it and not let it get cut. That was one of the hardest things, because businesses go through cycles. But I think you've got to start small, go with the people who are credible, but open, that want the training, use analytics to tell the story, and then expand, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Pick a partner like Essential Impact. We couldn't have done it without Essential Impact. No question about that.
Okay, I have a few more questions, and I know we got to be conscientious here of time. We've got not just a few. Jim, there are questions for days here for you. How does this is a good one, really interesting. How does Rogers integrate coaching so that it doesn't hinder operational requirements or the speed of business?
Yeah. So, well, that's a really good question. I think one of our biggest successes was in kind of convincing people this was worthy was in our call centers. And not everybody can do the essential impact 24-hour thing, right? It's very difficult to pull your frontline team managers out of a call center, when you're getting millions of calls from your customers a year.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did is we took the principle of coaching and getting behind the team, and we had to develop a slightly different approach in our call centers that was more flexible, more on the job kind of learning. And we sort of had we trained our frontline team managers how to coach the call center representatives to do better than just answering the call well and hanging up well. It was really to teach them about how to make a connection with a customer. We taught them about sort of emotional intelligence. We taught them empathy skills. We cleaned up their system so it wasn't so difficult for them to get things done. But most important is we got the frontline team managers skilled at coaching. We worked with a company called Switchgear, and they were sort of the essential, like in the corporate leadership world where we have 2,000 leaders. We had 1,000 frontline leaders. We use Switchgear in our call centers and in our retail stores because it was you can't pull people out for 3 days, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But in all of our leadership training, the thread that goes through all of it is coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I imagine that makes a huge difference when we think about consistency, the framework of language that your whole team is using.
Sure. And a lot of companies, they go a mile wide and an inch deep, right? So you try to do too much on the leadership side. We decided to go narrow and deep, right? And build a common language and a common skill set for anybody who leads teams around coaching. So that's kind of the approach that we took. And because it's a life skill, people responded very, very quickly, right? It was clear to them that this was helping them be more effective and their teams be more effective. So they kind of bought in.
Yeah. Okay, Jim, I think we have time for one more question, and how I'm even supposed to choose this for us, I don't even know. There is, like I said, so many. But, Annie, and I think this is a great question. Annie asks, and I'd love your take, Jim, here, in order to implement a coaching culture for a smaller organization, how would you recommend someone start? And actually, I'm going to bring Ed back on too, because I think this could be interesting through his lens as well. But I'd love to hear from you first.
Yeah. I would say start with yourself, right? Get certified yourself and experience the kind of boost in personal effectiveness and impact that you get when you learn this amazing skill and you get good at it. And then maybe, try to go to your, if you're running HR for a small company, you only have a small team, get everybody certified. Like, I think you have to pick the people who want the training, right? That are credible to the owner. And again, start small and then accelerate. But Ed, I'm sure you and Jody work with more, like I'm working in this big monster, right? Like it's hard sometimes to affect. I've always believed you change culture one team at a time. So it's never bothered me that we have 3,500 leaders, but that's just 3,500 teams. So if I can get each of those leaders to move their team engagement up every year, your culture de facto becomes stronger. So I think the same principle applies whether it's big or small. Anyway, that's my answer. You can always send me an email and if you don't agree with it or if you want more insight.
Yeah, Ed, I'd love to get your take on it as well.
Well, having came from a smaller organization in the charitable sector, I think, Jim, you laid out the principles that are still true. It doesn't matter how big or small the organization is. And I put them in the chat. The action steps I said are, it's about leadership. You need to have buy-in from leadership at some point. It doesn't have to be comprehensive, but it needs to be there in some way. Data, you want to study and kind of do that. And that probably comes later, not at the beginning, but you said those importance, start small. Start somewhere. And like Kimberly put something in afterwards, we started with career management. That's a great place to start. And then it's about finding your early adopters, the people who they're the ones who are going to buy in really quickly, be excited. And it's a little bit of a, it'll catch fire. It'll spread because of what's being said. And Jim, you said it, the testimony around it is, this is the best training I've been in my career. And when I sit in the room with somebody who's been 25-year corporate career and they say, this is the best training, that's when you know, okay, something special is there. They're going to tell somebody else about it. It's like going to a restaurant. You don't need the restaurant to tell you to tell people. If you have an amazing experience, you will tell people. And that's the whole thing, is deliver the value. And then the last one you talked about is grow it, right? So the idea is you find those early adopters. What's next? What's next? What's next?
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I would just throw in, Jody, before you move on is where we got stronger was, it's the combination. It was the genius of the and, right? It was teach leaders how to coach individually and then give them a framework for coaching their team. And the combination was very powerful.
I like that. The genius of the and. Yeah, right. For sure. That's good. Okay, well, I'm going to be hopping off screen here in just a minute. But to our audience, if you'd like to access additional coaching resources, we will be emailing everybody who's already indicated that they have given us permission to email them after this event. If you haven't given us permission and you'd like to be included, Lauren's going to drop our email address in the chat really quickly. It's info@essentialimpact.com. If you'd like to hear from us after this event, just let Lauren know, email us at info@essentialimpact, and you will also get access to some additional coaching resources, including the really incredible Rogers coaching case study, access to additional coaching webinars, and you will be entered in, and we're excited to share this, entered in to win a copy of Jim's upcoming book, which I think Ed and Jim, you guys are going to chat a little bit about that in a second. And Ed, we hinted at the beginning, there is something special for our CPHR members. I'll let you share that. Jim, thank you so much for joining us on the Q&A.
Yeah, thanks, Jody. And I'll ask you about that book there in a second, Jim, because I'm curious about what's in there. But for those of you who registered for this and you added, you said Essential Impact can contact me. We're not gonna overwhelm your inbox with a bunch of stuff, but we do have things available like the case study. You'll be automatically entered in the draw. If you don't know if you did that and you want to be added to the list, just send an email to Lauren at info@essentialimpact.com, and then we'll make sure that you're entered into the draw and you get the Rogers case study. One thing that you might want to be aware of is that Rogers has won the PRISM Award from the International Coaching Federation, which recognizes coaching culture. And so our case study is centered around that, because the PRISM Award has a rubric around how to measure the impact of coaching. And so that kind of ties it into it. So for those of you who are looking to build a case and maybe bring that to your leadership and you want some information or resources, we can be that. Again, I'm available. I'm here in Alberta, but I'll put my contact info into the chat. You can send me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn. When you're available, I'll put that there in a second, but happy to continue the conversation with you. And then finally, for those of you who are CPHR members, Jim, thank you for mentioning the coach training. You get a special discount for the coach training that's offered at Essential Impact. I'm sure Lauren will put something in the chat around how to access information around that. You get a 10% discount if you're a member of CPHR Alberta. And so that's just eligible. We know a lot of people here on the call may not be a member. And so that discount is for members only. So we invite you, if you're not already a member and you're here in Alberta, we'd really appreciate that. And I know Nicole will say something about that at the end as well. So Jim, you've been writing a book. You've said all sorts of great things today. So I'm very curious about what's in that book and what are you working on these days with that?
Well, first of all, this is the book here, Ed.
Yes.
Okay. So
yes,
I had this crazy idea when the pandemic started, and my wife Patty, because she's in television, we have to get up at 3:30 every morning, So I get up with her, make her coffee and things like that. So I just decided when the pandemic started and we went remote that I needed something, like I needed some balance, because I was sort of driving the pandemic response at Rogers. It was difficult. And so I went back to a challenge that Jim Collins gave to me when we were doing the Good to Great research. We used to have these debates about leadership, and I'm a big believer in leaders set the tone. They make incredible difference in terms of where the company gets to. And he was, he thought it was an overused excuse. So one of the things he said is, you should write a book one day, Jim. Probably know more about leadership. And we had this conversation about so much that's been written there's never been a topic that's been more written about, but it's hard to grab the handle. And so I wrote this book, which is brought together the best research on high performance, Jim Collins, Jeff Pfeffer, Dave Ulrich, John Cotter, the people that I've worked with over the years. And with the best research and with what I've observed the best leaders do. And the first part of the book is about, kind of 5 principles. These are life principles. It's about leadership in life, not just at work. Part 2 is the principles in action. So how do they mobilize in building teams and driving culture change? How do they mobilize in crisis? There's a chapter on coaching, that kind of thing. And then the third part of the book is coaching techniques, frameworks, tips, so that people can. It's kind of the book is written with a lot of stories and frameworks, but at the end of the day, it's called Leading to Greatness. It comes out in March of next year. It's about being the best you can be, and I believe that if you understand these principles that are timeless, simple, and actionable, you will get to a better place. So it's not like a lot of people do a narrow slice of leadership. I tried to go back and say, look, this is what works, and the principles build on one another. And so anyway, that's what I've tried to do. We'll find out if I did it.
Right on.
But it was harder than I thought, Ed, to write I wrote the book without understanding what you have to do to publish a book.
Oh, right. Yeah. You just launched ahead and then tried to figure that out.
Yeah. But I'm working with a publisher in Vancouver called Figure One.
Okay.
And they're fabulous. And so, March 1st, next year it comes out. And
Jim, can you show us the title again? We would love to see it. We've got a few people asking in the chat here.
Yeah, it's called Leading to Greatness, is what it's called. If you Google it, you'll see it on coming soon on Amazon or a couple of the different things. And there's a picture of the, I haven't Googled it myself, but my daughter said she found it. So it's got to be out there. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I mean, that sounds like a big thing to bite off. And the way you talked about it, I appreciate that. I look forward to reading that and learning from it. I have Jim Collins' books all behind me, so I'm curious about the color you're going to choose.
Jim Collins gave me such a wonderful endorsement, right?
Oh, did he? Good.
He's allowed me to put his name on the front cover of it based on my relationship. It was going to help, I think, in the US. So, but it's really for me about my next career, right? Is I want to go on a couple boards, and I just want to coach. I want to coach the people that I want to coach, not the people I have to coach, if you know what I mean, Ed.
I know what you mean. No, that's great to hear. So somebody actually asked that, and we're coming to the end, but maybe if you had a magic wand and you're talking about that next thing for you, it might be related to that book, or maybe it's the culture at Rogers. What would you do if you had that magic wand?
Yeah, like for me, the secret to success in life is you have to, and this is one of the principles. It's about to be successful. Your path to success is you play to your genetically encoded strengths, right? We're all in the assembly line of life. We're all kind of set up to excel at something, and everybody's different.
Yeah.
So early on in your career, you have to discover what that is, right? And then you have to figure out, when you start to have success, you'll build passion. So for me, this is about helping people discover their deep strengths and their passion. And I forget the quote, whoever said it, but it's, if you love what you do, and you're good at it, you'll never have to work a day in your life. And that's where I'm taking life after Rogers.
Yeah, well, that sounds outstanding, Jim. And I'm excited to hear that. I look forward to this book. We really appreciate your time. And thank you just for sharing a bit of that story and your experience and expertise. It's been really helpful. I hope before people check out, Nicole's going to come in here for a few closing comments, but if you don't mind, for those of you who are here listening, if you could write your takeaway in maybe a phrase or sentence, I think Jim would appreciate that. I know I would appreciate that. I've seen lots of great things coming in the chat. And the rest of the people here might appreciate seeing what comes up in the chat. So if you could just, that thing that really resonated for you, I think Jim would appreciate just hearing that feedback around what parts of the story were most helpful. So go ahead, and lots of stuff are being loaded up into there. And Nicole, I'll turn it over to you, but thank you so much, Jim, for your time, sharing your story. And we look forward to our next opportunity to connect. So thank you for that.
My pleasure, Ed. Thanks to you, and thanks to Jody and also to CPHR Alberta. It's been a privilege to be here for me. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
Well, thank you, Jim. And just there's so many takeaways, and the chat box is blowing up. I know for myself, trust is the oxygen of high performance. And I saw that in the chat box a few times. Through leadership training, the common thread is coaching. So I'm really excited to see what else comes through on the chat box. I first want to thank Jim Reid from Rogers, who is with us today as part of Essential Impact's webinar. Great information. The passion comes through. You can see the results. You can tell it works. That number 68 to 87% on engagement movement, that's not an easy number to achieve. So again, thank you, Jim, for sharing today. I want to thank Jody and Ed and the Essential Impact team for being a partner of CPHR Alberta, and an amazing partner at that. Again, if you're not a CPHR Alberta member and would like to, please email us info@bulletin@, so that you can reap some of the rewards that you can get through CPHR Alberta's partnership with Essential Impact. I think that's so important. Again, feel free to reach out to Jody and Ed and the Essential Impact team. They're there standing by, waiting for your emails and engagement with them. Again, I want to thank everybody who's been on the call today for your invested interest, your engagement. CPHR Alberta wouldn't be what we are without you as our members. So thank you for being a part of today's session. I know Jody and Ed are going to hang on the line a little bit to after the 1 o'clock time frame, if anybody wants to continue engaging with them. So please don't feel that you have to knock off right away at 1 o'clock. I want to thank Ali from CPHR, who's doing back-end support, and of course, again, the Essential Impact team. Check out your professional development page for up and coming sessions, and the next session, whenever that'll be, with Essential Impact. Thank you all.